So, again, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining for this first spark of the year 2025. We are happy to welcome Lishia with us, who works for We SEG. The reason why we invited We as ESCG is because in one of our conversations in closing the year and starting the new year of 2025, we wanted to assess how where we stand on sustainability and how far our members have developed their sustainability strategy. This is something ongoing already since more or less 10 years, and it has been accelerated the last years. And when discussing with our partner, We ESG, we realized that seldomly we talked about the impact of sustainability on our communities. And as we believe that cooperative banks have also impact on the territory, on the field with their members and clients, and in the development of their region, it's also an important assessment to have. So we feel that this is the occasion also for our members to learn what is being developed elsewhere, as this study that will be shown today has also been done under the command of the International Labor Organization. And so we believe that on that international capsule, it's important for us as cooperative banks to know more about what is done and how to pay attention to our communities. That being said, I would like to introduce you to Lisa, who will be our presenter and speaker today. Lisa, thank you very much for your time and on preparing this very interesting presentation. You will see it's also an interactive presentation where we believe that we will also want to learn from you and assess where you stand today on a personal level and also on a professional level. So, Lisa, thank you very much again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valeria. Hello, everyone. From my side, I am based out of Asia, and we've just celebrated the Chinese Lunar New Year in Asia and Southeast Asia just yesterday, 29th of January. Yes. So hello, everybody. Because we want this to be quite interactive. Maybe if you can also put in the chat box what you think of you've heard about the terms extractive economy, regenerative economy, what your initial thoughts about just transition might be while I put up the screen here for you to have a look at. Or if you wanted to share any thoughts or experiences, are you using electric vehicles, for example? Or have you upgraded your homes to more energy efficient tools and equipment? Share a little bit and we can talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, so I've got my screen here. Right, I hope it's loading now.
Yes,
Right.
perfect. We can see the screen. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. So a little bit of introduction. My name is Lishia. My name is Lishia Erza, and I am Indonesian. I come from a country of, I think we're close to 280 million people by now. And Valeria mentioned earlier, I am part of the WeESG group, and WeESG is out of the UK, but we have experts around the world, and we've delivered training, we've delivered technical assistance to financial institutions, corporates in about 35 countries now. So a little bit about myself. So I come from the private sector, and most of the work that I do is with also financial institutions, both banks and non-banks. In my experience, I've lived in different countries. I can share with you as well the practices in, of what I've seen in this region to do with just transition and how the financial institutions are taking part in that. I've also worked closely with the ILO team, so the International Labor Organization and Social Finance, and with ILO around the world, we have different initiatives working with banks and asset managers on sharing their just transition finance products, policies, and roadmaps. I was lucky because I've been awarded several things. And because I come from the private sector, this is my way of sharing my experiences. My family business is in agriculture, machinery manufacturing, and we're lucky to be one of the leading ones in this region. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We have about an hour together, so please keep your webcams turned on. We'll have some interaction later on. If you have any questions, please just put them in the chat box. And Valeria, if I can ask your help to read some of that because my screen is all the presentation. And if you have any experiences or questions at any time throughout the session today, feel free to ask and throw your questions. And hopefully today, out of this session, what we can have the sharing is helping you to get a little bit of understanding on the concept of just transition and the importance for the banking sector. It is also about risk management. It is also about opportunities. It is also about working together with the different stakeholders much closer. And then the second thing that we would probably explore a little bit today is the role of cooperative banks, your banks, how you can play an enabling role in a just transition in your own respective countries. And then also we have a look at some cases so you can have some practical approaches into embedding things, embedding the just transition principles into your lending practices or even product development. If you're part of an internal management team, you might also have a look at how this could be an initiative you can run within the organization. So just transition, I think if we can start with this conversation, it is talking about the shift. We see people transitioning into renewable energy. We have concerns about, how do we conserve water, how we can work closer with the environment. But at the same time, these environmental issues are not separated from the social element. And that's why sometimes we talked about the E, the environment, not so much about the social and the governance. Now, just transition actually addresses that shift, making sure that that low carbon economy is both equitable and inclusive to the people. So it's addressing a lot of the social and economic impacts, particularly for the workers, for communities, and many people around us. Usually, when we talk about just transition, an example is a shift from coal mines, from extractive industries, to something that they say it's regenerative. So the energy produces itself. In agriculture, we're using less chemicals for the soil so that the soil has time to regenerate and also would be healthier for the plants. It changes different ways of our production methods. Now, with mitigation and adaptation, the way we see it, it's not just about changing the way we live, adapting to the climate. It's not just about mitigating climate impact, but we also look at how it plays a role into poverty reduction, how it plays a role in the welfare of the people also. And therefore, when we talk about just transition, usually we talk about the potential economic growth. We talk about how people can be more resilient. And then, of course, the promotion of one of the examples is sustainable agriculture. Renewable energy is often talked about. Buildings are being produced now with more environmentally friendly materials, making sure that the way we live is promoting that growth and resilience. Because what we see is that there are potential negative impacts if we don't talk about just transition. Um, I think in the news we're seeing a lot of movements around the world talking about social inequalities. Sometimes, if it's a renewable energy project, the energy developers are getting a lot of the benefit, the power companies are getting a lot of the benefits, but not so much to the indigenous communities, for example, vulnerable groups in the society. Is it also giving opportunities to people with disabilities, with women, for example? So there are negative impacts that have been identified. When we shift into a low carbon economy, where it's not just about the economy and the environmental impact, but also those social side of things. The other negative impact that's also often being talked about is the water scarcity issue. Um, for example, if we shift into renewable energy that is based on hydropower, how does that impact the source of water for consumption for the people, especially in communities where they still rely heavily on agriculture and the need of water for that process? So, rural and vulnerable households are also impacted. And because some of these stakeholders are impacted with these transitions, there could be social tensions that happen. And therefore, it is important to address um, that shift from extractive to regenerative economy by looking at how these transitions can be socially just. It adheres to a sense of social justice, a sense of fairness, and that's why it's called the equitable or inclusive um, transition. So how does this then impact the key stakeholders? The first thing that usually happens and is a concern of the International Labor Organization is the potential job losses in the carbon intensive industries. What we mean here is, for example, if your energy source comes from coal, oil, and gas, for example, and the closing of these facilities would mean the loss of jobs in these facilities. For a just transition to happen, these people who used to work in these industries would need to change into the new ones. In applications, so earlier I asked if you're driving electric vehicles, for example, if you used to work as a mechanic, now you need to be reskilled to working with electronics. So that kind of shift in the way we live and the way the economy changes has some impact on the workforce, where the workforce would need reskilling. Sometimes you need to upskill to adapt to the new job opportunities and then changing the work environment as well. So, for example, if you're used to working with electricity or with high power generating industries in manufacturing, for example, and suddenly there is a shift where the energy becomes more efficient, the adaptability around that is a challenge for workforce around the world. And it also means that sometimes in a banking perspective, when you used to assess these carbon intensive industries, when you're used to your SME members, for example, working in what we call the conventional or the extractive or the old way of doing things, now they are under pressure to also adapt and adopting new ways of doing things. So, for example, if your SME is considering shifting to working with solar energy and installing solar panels, for example, where in the past they didn't need the people to maintain solar panels, now they might need people to hire to do that. When they request loans, for example, the credit assessment team might have to look at new ways of identifying risks, new ways of identifying the opportunities when your SME members are shifting to new energy sources. I mean, that's just an example. The second thing is about the consumers. So consumers are increasingly trying to access more sustainable products and services. I was in Italy a couple of months ago. In the past, Italian leather is known to be top of the range, known around the world. But then increasingly, when I was in Italy, I looked at the leather products. It has also now changed into sustainable options where it uses different innovations. Vegan leather becomes one of the products on offer. So the consumers are also transitioning in the way they choose the products, in the way they choose what they consume, how they consume it, and what happens at the end of that consumption. And because of that, there is also the potential of short-term price increase in energy and basic goods because the businesses are transitioning into greener practices. Businesses are transitioning into how they change waste to energy, how waste could be reproduced into new materials, the circular economy, especially in Textile, fashion, footwear is also looking at some of these changes, even for SMEs. On the business, for example, as a business stakeholder, there are also challenges in adapting new business models and processes. Securing skilled workforce to enable this transition is another one. I'll give you an example of, one of the client companies is a textile producer. So this company produces the fabric that we find in sportswear, in quick dry items for the gym. So when this company is trying to look at how they can have recycled their water usage and that water circulation can become a mini hydro facility, one of the challenges that they have is having to look at how much investment they would need for the new machineries and the new fittings around it. And when they come to the bank team is also trying to grasp, what the new model means for their loan facility. And then the second thing that this company is having challenges with is because he used to work with just power generation from coal-fired power plant, and now he's trying to set up his own micro hydropower. He needs to hire new engineers to his company, and people are trying to figure out, new ways, new SOPs, new procedures and processes within the company. And one of the challenges also for businesses in this transition is the high investment needed to take advantage of the new green markets. So, for example, if companies are exporting into Europe, for example, increasingly now there are compliance requirements that's being put on the businesses, making sure there's traceability, there's the carbon emission disclosures that you need to do. So businesses are also trying to figure out these costs and what the opportunities and how long do they need to plan for this transition to take place efficiently. And then the fourth item is also the communities and how vulnerable populations are being part of the just transition. When they used to work for power generation companies, manufacturing that uses a lot of coal, for example, in the past, in that region, it's not just about the power plant, but it is also the surrounding services, the food providers, the social services that are available in that area. Once these facilities close down, the economic potential also closed down as a value chain through these centers. And that's why there is potential of economic decline in areas where high emitting activities happen. So, for example, if your area or your clients are SMEs in the manufacturing industry or transport industry, and they're thinking about shifting to a new business, having to change their location, a lot of people around them will also be affected. And that's why there's also the opportunity for local economic diversification and development of new sustainable industries. We'll talk a little about this a little bit later. Um, so this is, a question for you. If you see this is a picture of a taxi company in Indonesia. They are transitioning their taxi fleet from initially normal cars, from using gasoline. They are changing slowly their fleet into electric vehicles. And as you can see here, this is their depot. In the past, they would have here, filling tanks, and now it's battery charging stations here. Here, then, with this just transition, usually it would include providing jobs and social protection. The mechanics are wondering, will I still be hired once all of this transition into EV fleet happens? Training opportunities, how can I afford training? How do I find the training? If we are used to, cleaning oil mess, and now it's all electronic, there's no more oil mess. So even the cleaners of the facility are thinking about, how do I get around this? And then with the inclusive decision making, sometimes the communities and stakeholders are not being involved in the conversations as well. An example would be if you are in, forestry areas, there's a group of indigenous people in the area, and there's a development of new energy sources in the area. Are they also involved in discussions about land tenure, where this land is going to be used for renewable energy generation, for example? Another one would be about protecting biodiversity. So just transition conversations usually also talk about, yes, we're opening up these new renewable energy, ocean power, for example, but how does that affect the biodiversity or the animals and plants that used to live in the area? Is it going to be affected? Are there any conservation efforts that's being put together while we are combating the climate change? And then usually the just transition efforts would be supporting affected communities. Are there industries that need change? Are there regions that needs some policy changes, or there are countries that may lose economically? One example is a municipal government where the leader or the mayor has a vision of becoming net zero by 2045. What he is looking is a list of the industries that are operating within his municipality, and then identifying these are the top 10 high uh, gas greenhouse gas emitting companies, and these are the lower ones. If I want to phase this out, what would be the new industry to be developed in the area, and how the financial institution um, can take part in that effort. So I'm asking if, let me see if there are any questions in the group uh, before I continue. So, okay, no questions yet? Okay, great. So let me continue. Um, so now, okay. So, it starts again. Sorry. Right. So, how does the lack of just transition impacting banks? So, this is an example of how the carbon transition cause loan defaults by clients. When we don't manage the transition well, one example from a coal plant in Indonesia, um, it actually created a lot of defaults in the area. In 2015, so almost 10 years ago, 125 mining companies went bankrupt because of the falling coal prices and rising regulation. So, because of the energy shift, um, usually the biggest power generation comes from coal in this region. And when the issue came about where it's going to be renewable is going to take precedent, at the time, it wasn't planned that these coal companies need to transition into renewable energy. What happened was 125 companies at the same time went bankrupt. And because of that, the job losses within the 125 companies in one province is enormous. 180,000 coal workers is estimated, over the next couple of years, and by 2030, is going to lose their jobs. And then another 150,000. So that's already, 300,000 people's jobs lost. And what that means is, if you have a mortgage, or if you have a small loan, if you have any liabilities personally, or even if the family runs small businesses, 300,000 of these families are losing their jobs. The income losses there would also then affect their banking relationships. So for the banks, if the low carbon transition is not managed, and if the banks are not also looking into these opportunities and how these transitions are being prepared, it could happen that overnight, 300,000 of your clientele could lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods. And it's all because of that transition that wasn't planned well. So when we integrate the just transition in our policies and processes, first of all, we are aligning the just transition principles into your purpose. And this is where the community, the stakeholders, the financial institutions, the private sector, the individuals, like the personal banking clients, um, have a look at the just transition from a social and human capital development in a long-term value within this low carbon economy. What it means here is if you are a financial institution that is serving a special category, with the just transition, you're also building that long-term value with your customers when you work with them through the transition. And from this, new financial products could be developed. So for example, in the past, when mechanics have to change into electricians working with the battery servicing, installation of charging stations, for example, there's the upskilling need to finance in the smallholder ones. So in the past, we're probably familiar with educational loan products, but that's usually for degrees, for long-term investments. Now here, because of this transition, new loans related to education and reskilling could be developed. Another one is also, for example, one of the cooperatives in Indonesia are trying now to launch products where they finance solar panel installations for households and small businesses. So in the past, they wouldn't be offering these new products, but because of the transition, new product opportunities and new ways of assessing risks, delivering digital financial services for specific just transition items are possible. The other thing about policies and processes is also the client engagement. Sometimes the companies, the SMEs, have probably read about transitioning into the greener practices, or they are by law are required to comply to certain green practices. A lot of these companies are also struggling to find know-how and transfer of knowledge. And this is where the financial institution also can provide advisory services to the clients. And it also becomes a client engagement activity, whether it's through training, webinars, conversations, and increasingly I'm seeing also some project development that's being co-developed between the company and the bank to see where the financing requirements might be, including when the clients are looking at energy efficiency and water efficiency. Sometimes the banks would work with them from an advisory service point of view. Risk management, that's another integration of just transition in your policies and processes in the bank. So you can have a look at what are the risks and different at the moment. I think a lot of the experiences that I'm hearing are different parts of the bank are trying to understand these new risks and how different facilities, different guarantee mechanisms, how they can work with donors, how you can work in creating de-risking mechanisms and working also with impact insurance for the low carbon transition efforts. Market position is something else also. So you can have a lead in the just transition finance and making sure that your organization is ahead of the market to enhance your reputation. Also making sure that the new generation of clients, especially the young generation, young population, are also more conscious about their choices. Even if you have logistics companies, for example, who are offering carbon offset every time you want to send a parcel, there is an increase in these demands, and this could position your bank or your cooperative into a different segment, being socially aware, environmentally aware. And then, of course, aligning with sustainability regulations. Increasingly, more and more countries are coming up with green taxonomies. The Monetary Authority are also incentivizing greener practices, having like a traffic light system, like what are the red industries and which ones are green, which ones are still a little bit brown. So with sustainability regulation, it's not just about complying as a bank, but also for your clients to have the option to choose, because some clients, because of their commitment to net zero, they would choose along their supply chain, including their banking relationships, partners who can also help them increase that opportunity for them. And so, some ways that cooperative banks, such as yourselves, can contribute to the just transition is through the commitment to social equity to enable your clients to address those social economic challenges because of the shift. So, as a cooperative bank, one of the immediate ones and quite common in different markets and jurisdictions around the world is supporting the SMEs to consider them and helping these SMEs address the social impact of their green transition. Do they need to lay off some people because of the shift in their business model? Do they need to hire new people and increase their working capital because of these changes? So a lot of the banks, even large ones who are traditionally not working with the SMEs, are now seeking to work with SMEs to help the SMEs move forward in their transition. And the way the banks are working with these clients are, a mix of between the knowledge about the transition and the financial products that go with it to finance that mitigation, to make sure that they have enough resources, to make sure that they don't get into a situation where it's a negative social impact. The other thing that a lot of these banks are doing around the world are also designing products that are tailored to vulnerable communities, especially those who are disproportionately affected by the transition. So low income populations, women and minorities are the most popular, and there are different ways of including these populations into the just transition and the products that could be developed for these communities. Um, some of the products that we see happening quite a lot around the world is, number one is the workforce retention loan. So it's usually low interest loan. Sometimes it's concessional because it's heavily subsidized by the government or a philanthropic group. And it is for SMEs to maintain jobs and wages during their transition. For example, if you're sending your staff to learn how to manage different ways of working with soils and crops, another one will be working with mechanics and energy generation, battery maintenance. These people would be out of the work and not being very productive for a period of time. But then at the same time, these SMEs maybe have to bring in new experts, hire new staff to do it, or also working with these upskilled workforce throughout the process. So instead of having to fire them, there's also some loans for the SMEs to maintain jobs for their people. Another one is of course, the employee training fund. So it could be in the form of grants. So I'm seeing also a lot of banks providing through their CSR programs, grants, subsidized loans for SMEs to upskill their employees into different practices, technologies, even compliance with different certification requirements to maintain their business growth. Another one that I'm seeing happening also is the community impact. So this would be the preferential loans for SMEs that demonstrate positive impact. So if they're creating local jobs, if they're supporting specific initiatives alongside their green initiatives, so it's an additional expansion of their impact. We're seeing some of these also being in the market through different means. The support for vulnerable populations is something that's quite immediate when we talk about just transition. So usually it's the support loan, how the vulnerable communities can cover the costs adapting to green energy. So, say for example, you have a community around you that is in need of transitioning their appliances from high wattage into something more efficient, or their, especially during winter, their energy usage for heating appliances needing some upgrades. So this is an area where low interest loans could be beneficial to support that just transition. Community Resilience Fund is usually, oh, sorry, smaller grants for local cooperatives. So there's a trend in re-granting capabilities. So as a cooperative, you may have smaller branches and communities in the area where they could have benefits from reskilling themselves, retraining, affordable energy solutions, and in this sense, that community resilience is usually targeted through the most vulnerable populations overall. There's also a lot of talk about how renewable energy can benefit indigenous communities and how they can partake because it's a new job. Everybody's trying to reskill themselves. They come from the same playing field and skills level as everyone else. So that inclusion it could be part of this. And then a lot of the just transition and low carbon economy is geared towards energy efficiency or energy transition into greener energy. And so energy access credit is also increasingly available in different parts of the world. So this would be your microloans to help low income families access renewable energy solutions. So even as a solar panel, for example, for a community, in the past, because you have to be part of a grid to access electricity, sometimes the rural communities are being left out of that. And with the new schemes and energy access microloans, some of these communities can remain off grid, but then they are using renewable energy sources to operate within their community. So there could be energy schemes, flexible repayment terms, and even as a community, they could set up their own power generation and distribution systems as a community as opposed to individuals only. Here's an example of a way where BDO Bank in the Philippines, it's funding, it's called the Isabela Biomass Energy Corp. So this case is where, because of that transition, where in the past there's a lot of coal generation power plants, there are new technologies that enable agricultural waste to be turned into sources of energy. So in this case, this electricity and this energy generation project is actually providing additional income to farmers because the waste that used to be just thrown out or sold at a low price is now being off-taken by IBEC, where it becomes the main source of energy for the company. So in this sense, BDO Bank supports the renewable energy project by having a look at the areas where it's the most vulnerable communities and how it can finance the purchase to the farmers and educating the farmers where the waste is no longer um, not having any value, but now it has new value where it supplies to the energy company. So here, as an example, that biomass energy company can demonstrate fair pricing for the agriculture waste. So even though previously it was priced at zero because it's waste, because it becomes a new source of energy, the energy company can work with the community. What is the optimal pricing for that agriculture waste? And with that, long-term purchase agreements with the local farmers could be part of the financing condition. And with that, the farming communities then will have steady income, not as unpredictable as a lot of agriculture practices might be. And then the financial product for the just transition in this case, one example could be in the form of a circular economy agricultural loan. So this would be combining the loan between the renewable energy project financing with the preferential rates tied to the farmer participation rates. So you can have different mix in the product. Another example would be a case where the cooperative bank in Quebec proactively engages vulnerable population to co-develop renewable energy project to address their own energy poverty. So the beauty of the renewable energy is it could be installed, it could be available in even the most remote areas of the country. So Desjardins then announced 350 million support, and it's a coalition of municipal and indigenous governments in Canada to develop and operate the wind farms. It is a lot of collaboration between energy company uh, and different forms of the energy itself. So within this project is 4 wind farms, and the combined output is significantly large, but this allows the indigenous community to invest into the company and benefit from the renewable energy project. So it's not just about the renewable energy, but then the opportunities that opens up for the local communities could be part of that. The IFC also created a framework where it's looking into the land tenure and making sure that land tenure um, rights are being addressed, because otherwise they see it as a potential risk to disruptions of new renewable energy projects. Right. So I've talked quite a lot. Um, I would like to invite questions or experiences that you might have in your own daily lives about renewable, about just transition, or even the role of technology in your respective fields. So yeah, welcome to um, ask any questions. And while we have this discussion, I would also like to invite you to fill in this feedback form. You can scan the QR code on screen if you have your phone, or you can click the link on the chat box. Right. So, any questions, any experiences you'd like to share? Is it too early?
Don't hesitate to write a question or a comment on the chat should you have one.
Is
I
anyone here from technology or from market? Maybe have you heard anything in your areas?
One of the questions that I could have also is to the audience is why did you, when you heard about this Spark presentation, did it resonate for you on a private label or on a professional side? Did you know about the term just transition? Is it
Andrea,
something?
or should we start calling people? Leave them
Well,
over
hello
saying, oh,
everyone.
hello.
Well, okay, so I will start just to break this wall of silence, of silence, and I would like, first of all, to thank you very much for choosing or bringing this topic on the table, because it's very interesting. Personally, I'm fully engaged in this era, and coming here and discussing about this noble causes are often something that animate me in kind of way. Now, to respond perhaps to your question directly, if it is interesting for as personally in our personal life or in professional context, I would say the both, because as part of Banque Populaire, Groupe Banque Populaire Africa, we are an engaged company. We have some values that support eco-responsibility, and even in our strategic orientation. There are many projects that have been launched in this purpose. Perhaps we didn't attain yet our ambitions to reduce the carbon print and to be fully in this projections, but we can say, and it was assessed, and unfortunately I don't have the numbers, but I would love to be to have my colleague that she was invited, but she didn't have time to attend us. She tried. Who is shouldering this topic inside the organization, and perhaps if you would hear, she would talk about the topic better than anyone else, and bring some metrics to show how much saving the company has realized by saving electricity. Some very huge effort that I make in a structured way, and also in impacting behaviors of everyone in daily life, in electricity, also in water. Excuse me, I maybe use some common words and not perhaps very technical words according to the field, but what I could say as just employee, that in terms of air conditioning, for example, there is some time slot which is automatically shut off. Down sorry, and even electricity, the source of water are touchless. So once we yes, it's in order to save energy for consuming papers and every renewable energy source of energy. Once again, sorry for using words that are perhaps not it is commonly used by professionals. And what I can say on my behalf as each participant to this call, and even our participation in this project inside the organization, is the effort of sensibilization or increasing the awareness. Because yes, even if it is written in the orientation or strategic orientation, and even if there is a lot of budget that are put in this kind of project, it starts with awareness, and the awareness that drive behaviors. And as you know, in every conduct change projects, which is very perhaps difficult or something sensible to guarantee or to assess, is to have to move from the awareness to action, how to take action, and how to embody all these values into daily behaviors. And I'm talking to this as each our parts. So it's a very ambitious commitment, and it takes time to move from status values to embody behaviors in the. And thank you also to bring the highlights how it can be profitable for the economy, for business to go this way. It is not just a trend or a new way of shining outside the company and e-reputation. We can really do business, and we can really be profitable if we follow this commitment as well. So thank you, and excuse my my English.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your comments. And you're right about the profitability, because sometimes the risk team at the bank would be asking me, these people are investing into these new things. Are they going to make money to repay the loans at the end of it? And we have seen cases, and a lot of them, where the businesses are actually improving their profitability as high as 30%. 40%, and it is a combination because sometimes it's not just about one area, but it's integrated, and that's why it's a just transition approach, not just the environmental approach to that. And some of the concerns also come with the banking personnel that are saying, I don't know how to calculate carbon emission. Will I lose my jobs? Because people now are having to calculate those carbon emissions. And, as the person wasn't trained previously, there are concerns even within the banking personnel about, if I, misprice, or if I don't know enough, will I be irrelevant to my industry? And that is also why I'm seeing several banks and several cooperatives putting together like their own task force, whether it's to look at just transition as a new opportunity to expand their market, or working with their current clientele to reduce, any transition risk that they might face. And then the IT department is also being involved in terms of any kind of disclosures that the bank might need to do, and how that would be integrated with their current solutions. If their clients are requesting, are there traceability or impact measurement that they need to be automated, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to operate. I mean, some of the digital transformation has happened, but then if you have to do it manually, you go back to old ways of doing things as well. So yeah, as you said, from the awareness to that concrete action, many banks, many cooperatives, many professionals in the financial services industries in all departments, including HR, talent development, including diversity and inclusion initiatives, are all looking at just transition um, as an integrated effort. So thank you for your comment. And it doesn't matter if we don't have the same terms, but we mean the same thing, I think. So thank you very much. Pia, I see that you're smiling there. Anything you'd like to
Yeah,
share?
I think awareness is a very good point. I think in Europe, very often we are, at the moment at least, focusing very often on the E and the G in
Yeah,
ISG, and not yet enough to social points. And I think with your work, you're giving quite a good idea which points could be taken in account, because it's not easy to measure the S or aspects of S. So already your categories, what could be regarded when you try to evaluate a project or something like that, would be very helpful for a lot of people to get aspects also to measure the S, and to be able to to give ESG data, including S data, even if
yeah.
it's a bit it's not that clear, but to have some aspects that you could could regard. Yeah.
Absolutely, because sometimes with social, it becomes quite difficult um, for people to then determine, is this enough? Is this impactful enough? And sometimes the calculations would be, I think traditionally it's a number, like the number of male and female workers involved, the number of indigenous communities accessing the product. Sometimes it is also a question of, for example, the skill changes. Is there a better upskilling to the new opportunities or new economy, if you want to put it, that is included? And one of the challenges that we find is, of course, valuing that change, because sometimes a company will say they're focused mostly on the youth population, making sure that they have access to new green jobs, for example. But then the youth demographic when they hear green, they just think about engineering, earth sciences, whereas actually we also have financial reporting. IFRS, we have SASB, we have, audits, where any social science graduates from the youth age group can participate in that. So different ways. I mean, the socially, it's also sometimes the financial contribution that's being allocated to including workplace that is having clean air for children. Like in some countries, there are issues with pollution, so the social impact is in the healthcare of the community, the access to that health. And for example, in areas where it's the distance to clean water or distance to energy that is not allowing them to access, digital solutions. Um, Social, sometimes it's thought of charity. A lot of people also misunderstand that. It's like, oh, it has to be a charity, it has to be philanthropic effort. And when we talk about the S element, it doesn't stop there. There are different indicators that could be used for that. Let me put. I have the uh, Indonesian Just Transition framework that I could show you. Maybe this would also give you an idea of what are the parameters they're
Yes, please.
using. Yeah, so they are looking at the different parameters for, let me see. Here, let me share. So this one is a country level document, and it is publicly available. So what they are proposing is the new indicators, for example, um, livelihood plans. Are there any affected livelihoods that are affected by these changes? Are there complaints and concerns raised by local communities if they're saying, sure, you have a renewable water power hydro facility there, but even I don't have electricity because it's all being sold to a specific company, for example. And then also the number of SMEs that are being contracted by entities, by these transitioning larger corporates in their transition process. So say, for example, the installation of solar panels, are they contracting these smaller SMEs to actually do that and the maintenance around it? So it's not just the larger companies. And then another one that they're looking for is the number of jobs created. Are there new jobs? Are there new hires? And this is broken down by age groups, total number of jobs that are being transferred, the number of employees. So even socially within the organization, how many employees are receiving reskilling. I suppose this webinar is one example of that reskilling effort. And that could be part of that social element that you mentioned.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I have the impression that this could be a tutorial indeed for our members because it considers, as we just said, not only personal ethics, but also, as Fatima said, professional ethics and the consideration also, as Pia said, on how the cooperative banks, especially them, sustain the local economy, taking into account the business of any member that may have, but also to consider the people that this company would hire and the upscale that it will bring to them. So again, this is a lot of food for thoughts for our members. So dear colleagues, please don't hesitate to share this spark to internally bring the topic, as Lizia said, the more we talk about it, the more we raise awareness about it. So knock at the door of the different departments, knock at the door of your strategy, sustainability, responsible, if there's any department on that, in order to see what you and to know more about what your organization is doing, and feel relevant in working in a cooperative bank. So this will be my closing words. Sorry. Thank you very much again, Lisa, for being with us and for your passion and transmitting this knowledge. I think it's important. And I hope to see you in another occasion. And for the ones loyal to the Spark sessions, hopefully we see each other next month. And it will be indeed about financial inclusion, how cooperative banks can apply a model to make sure that they are driving the right knowledge about the financial education. So thank you very much again, and see you another occasion. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Very
Bye.
good.